Hi, I'm Kenneth Sutton, and this is Common Hawthorne. I am doing my first video response to LadyKnight of Avalon's hashtag shoppingfortarot to celebrate the fact that, yes, I do buy a lot of decks. I only started getting serious about tarot in the spring, and I have actually been buying a lot of tarot and oracle decks, trying them out, seeing what works, what doesn't work. So there are 10 questions. What was the last deck I bought and why that one? Well, I most recently received the Illuminated Earth Oracle, and I bought it from the creator online because I think it's beautiful. And it has a combination of abstract and specific keywords in a way that I really liked, that I thought that would work well for me. So the most recent deck I actually bought was on a recent trip, and I bought the Smith Waite Centennial Edition. It has some original artwork by Pixie in it, and I bought it because I was near a metaphysical shop and I wanted to go in and I wanted to support it. And also, my original tarot deck, it's very old, it's been sitting, in boxes forever, is a Rider-Waite Smith with a crosshatched blue and black back, and I can't bear it. And I kept thinking, I should, use a Rider-Waite Smith deck, and it just didn't do it. So anyway, I bought this to see if it would work. I also recently received the Wisdom of the Forest Oracle, which I bought directly from the creator, and because it's beautiful. I don't know. It also seems very gentle, which sometimes I really want that in a deck. And then I bought from somebody on Facebook in one of the selling groups, I bought the Tarot of Delphi, which I have been coveting for ever since I found out about it, because the Pre-Raphaelites and the related art movements are one of my favorites. And so I bought that from somebody who was downsizing. Second question, what's my decision process when I buy a new deck? Sometimes it's spur of the moment, like the Rider-Waite Centennial, and sometimes I think about it for a while. I do have a wish list on Amazon that I use if I see something that I'm like, I might be interested in, and so I stick it on there. If it's an online purchase, like through Etsy or Kickstarter or directly from the artist, I have usually thought about it a little while. I like to see walkthroughs. And sometimes I'll buy a deck because I'm in love with a specific card that I've seen online. So my process is all over the map. Deal breakers. Third question. What are deal breakers in a deck that keep me from buying it? Representation matters. And while I'm not the kind of person who's typically not represented in a deck, there are in fact decks that have no men or no white people, and I'm not inclined to buy those. I think it's very important that decks like that exist, and I think that it's important that the decks that are being created have a variety of people of all sorts in them, because that increases the ability of people to be able to see themselves in a deck. But that also goes for me. I want to be able to see myself in the deck. And I'm a gay white man who's middle-aged and heavy. So I tend to look for those things, and the less inclusive they are, then the less likely I am to get them. The other deal breakers, price, although there's some exceptions, like Tarot of Delphi. That was a pretty penny, and I'm hoping it will feel worth it. Fourth question, little white book or big guidebook? I'm a little white book. I do like the booklets that come in many of the indie decks that are actually like a little booklet, even though they're still small enough to fit in the box. They're the same dimensions as the cards, but they're not just a little, 8-page leaflet kind of thing. I find the little white books essential for like some of the Lascarabio art decks, like John Bauer, Tarot of Durer, because they're using imagery that comes from, that wasn't purpose made. It is important that there be something to help me figure out what the imagery is. Decks that have a big like system that they go on at length about in a book, I tend not to read. The exceptions are the guidebooks for Pagan Otherworlds and the Supper Oracle. I find those very useful. And there are a couple of decks that I have that have little white books that have basically been made into big books. So they both don't match the size of the deck, and they also don't have very much more content than would fit in a little leaflet or a small book. The Oracle decks sometimes have a guidebook that is more extensive than a little white book, and I do appreciate that sometimes. 5, do I have new deck rituals? How do I break in a new deck? I put the cards in order, and I order mine, the majors first, starting with the Fool, and then I put Pentacles, Swords, Wands, and Cups. They are almost never in that order from the publisher, but I like them Earth, Air, Fire, Water. So I put them in that order, and I count them, and I take a quick look at each card, and I shuffle them thoroughly, and depending on how the deck feels, sometimes I put them back in order, and sometimes I'll flip back and forth several times. I live on Cape Cod, and sometimes I'll take a deck, especially if it's a deck that I bought used, I'll take it out on the deck near the harbor, and I'll expose each card to the sun, the wind, the ocean, and the earth. Just like sitting on the deck, I feel really lucky to be able to do that. 6, have I ever been disappointed after getting a deck because it felt different than expected? And bonus question, have I ever been pleasantly surprised by a deck? As I said, I just started getting serious about tarot in the spring, and there were 2 decks that I gave away within weeks of getting them. And but then there are 2 very popular decks that I still have, but I intend to get rid of them because I think because they just have not clicked with me. And that's the Luminous Void Tarot, which it's not the size or the shape. I mean, they're clearly too big for a lot of people, but man, big hands. That doesn't bother me too much. And the fact that they're ovals, that's fine. But the art, the kind of the watercolor art, I don't like it. I thought I would, and it's just like I just don't like it. The other deck that I bought, I got on a bandwagon. I was right at the end. I felt very lucky. I have a copy of the Spirit Keeper's Tarot Vitruvian edition, and it just leaves me cold. There's just too much going on. It's like everything is on the card. It's like there's just too much. I just don't like it. So I'm probably going to I'll probably sell it because I just bought the Tarot of Delphi, and so I can sell my Spirit Keepers to make up for that. I bought St. Jinx's Arcana Gay Tarot in the X-rated version, and it turns out it just doesn't work for me. There's a certain he does a certain style of gay art really well, and it's actually distracting. And so I've ordered the PG, or actually R-rated version, to try instead, and I think that'll work out a lot better. Because I do like the fact that it is gay. I bought the substitute cards to have male only. I don't know how that'll work for me, but I want to be able to try that out. I'm really pleased with how much I like the Centennial Smith weight. The muted colors and the cards totally changed the deck for me. I didn't realize it would do that. And I like the backs a lot better. They're the ones with her sigil. I also like the This Might Hurt deck more than I expected to. Another updated Rider-Waite-Smith. Question 7, do I interview new decks? I did some deck interviews soon after I started, and I liked that, but I haven't done them in several months. It's like I haven't felt really like keeping up with that. And also I kind of feel like that might be more, for the way I do tarot, might be more useful if I do it after I've used the deck for a while. I have pulled cards asking specific questions, like I went through a bunch of my decks asking them what element, or some decks are kind of water, some decks are kind of air, so I pulled cards from each deck asking that. I decided to ask a lot of decks. I can't even remember what I decided I would use as the criterion, because it's kind of a yes-no question. But I asked, should I pay attention to reversals or jumpers? And what I quickly concluded, I didn't even record it in my tarot journal, because it became really clear doing that with a whole bunch of decks in sequence, overhand shuffling them, that some of these decks are never going to jump and others jump constantly, and that it is just a physical thing about my hands, the deck, the coating, the stiffness, whatever, that if the reversals were going to be meaningful, they would happen across all the decks. And they didn't. So, I haven't done interviews, but I've done questions like that. 8, do I ever buy decks for a specific purpose, only using it for that one? Not so far. 9, do I differentiate between decks I buy for myself and decks I would use for other people? Well, I've never read for another person, so I'm not sure. I suspect that I have a couple of decks that would feel too personal to use for someone else. And I have a couple of decks I think would be unsuitable for many or most people I might read for, like St. Jake's Arcana. But we'll see. I don't, if I became a professional reader, I guess I could imagine having decks that were just for use with clients that I didn't use personally. Or maybe even duplicates so that I might have a copy that I use with clients and one that I use for myself. And it's not because I subscribe to a bunch of woo, but it is, even as a psychological tool, I think that there might be that difference. 10 and last, what is one thing I wish deck creators would do more of, or stop doing? I have never liked any of the bags that come standard with a deck, so I would just stop doing that. I did buy a flawed deck, Oracle deck from an indie producer, and she included one of her bags, which she usually sells separately, with the deck, and I like that bag, but the ones that are kind of like mass produced to go with decks, I haven't liked any of them. I'd like more decks to be in sturdy 2-part or clamshell boxes instead of tuck boxes, although I have some tuck boxes that are really kind of nice and sturdy, but they're just, they're not going to stand up long term as well as a 2-part or clamshell. And what I really hate are mass publishers, although some, I guess, like there are decks that started out Andy but then went this way, where it's a big box and you open it up and then there's a big book and you take out the book and maybe there's even a ribbon to pull it out, and then there's either a little compartment with the deck in it wrapped, usually when you buy it, but then when you unwrap it, they can get kind of messy. or even another box inside the box. It's like, I really don't, that's a waste of packaging. And I wish that even when the book is substantial, I wish it was closer in size to the deck. And then in general, I would like any businesses to stop using so much plastic and shrink wrapping in both packaging and shipping. And people are all over the map about Etsy or even Kickstarter things about how they ship. And I really get that, here's the deck and it needs to be delivered in a way that the customer is confident that it hasn't been handled and that it's all supposedly there. But, wrap it in paper. And I know when you're getting things mass produced that they come the way they come. And that's why it's not just about tarot producers, it's about businesses in general changing the way they do business. So that's it, and I hope that you have found something of interest. And now, of course, I'm looking at my software to turn it off. Again, this is Kenneth, and thank you for watching.